Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an armored catfish named Forrest. Forrest the armored catfish lived deep in a bay where the murky waters made it hard for any sunlight to reach the deep sea floor. He had bony plates around his whole body and swam around the sea floor every day. But what really set Forrest apart from all the other creatures in the water was that Forrest the armored catfish was a very hungry fish. Let's see what's for breakfast today, said Forrest the armored catfish. Well, I guess it doesn't matter too much. If it looks good, I'll most likely enjoy it anyways. Forrest roamed the sea floor, his powerful fins propelling him through the strong currents. He ate anything and everything he could find as he swam around. It was hard to even see Forrest the armored catfish because of his armor and the spots on his armor that made him blend in with the sea floor. So none of the other sea creatures would ever notice Forrest swimming by and eating food. Forrest the armored catfish was very thorough with his eating and made sure he would eat up everything he sees because he was always so hungry. And as Forrest's appetite grew, the food that all the other animals depended on was going away. The smaller fish, the crabs, the shrimp, and the other smaller creatures found themselves struggling to survive. Their usual feeding grounds were emptier because of Forrest the armored catfish eating up all the small food. After some time, the other sea creatures were wondering why there was so little food. There used to be much more algae and smaller worms out before, but for some reason, the other animals were not able to eat as much as before. So all the creatures around the bay came together and had a meeting. They were not happy at all about how there wasn't enough food for all the creatures. One of the hermit crabs said to the other creatures,
"We need to get to the bottom of this right now. If we can't eat, then we're all in deep trouble. I really hope it's not another creature eating everything here in the bay. I mean, seriously, what kind of creature would stoop so low? We need to get down to the root of this problem now."
The other creatures all agreed. It was hard for all the animals to eat. And as the creatures were talking amongst themselves, a gar came forward and said,
"Well, if the smaller creatures can't eat the smaller food, they can't get big enough, or there can't be enough of them to feed the bigger creatures. And if the bigger creatures can't eat, well, then they can't get big enough, and there won't be enough of them to feed the even bigger fish like me."
All the sea creatures wanted to figure out what was going on. If this kept going on, then none of the animals would be able to live in the bay. Something had to be done. As they were all talking, Forrest the armored catfish was also there in the meeting, listening to everything, not knowing that they were actually talking about him. So as he listened, he also got upset. "I can't believe there might be some creature out there that's eating up all the food here," said Forrest. "I mean, personally, I haven't had a hard time finding food. But if this is happening to everyone else, well, then I'm upset too." And he joined in on the meeting, listening to others share how they weren't eating as much as they used to. Even a little shrimp that was right next to Forrest the armored catfish had something to say. "We want to know who is behind this food issue. We need to get this bay back to what it used to be like. We have to end this problem and leave it in the past." And as Forrest the armored catfish was listening to the other sea creatures talking, he began to get hungry again. So he naturally looked around to see if there was any food. And he just naturally went for the shrimp as it was talking and just sucked it into his mouth. All the other sea creatures froze in shock. They all looked at Forrest the armored catfish, and Forrest realized he just ate the shrimp that was talking. So Forrest apologetically spit the shrimp back out. The shrimp tumbled and caught itself in the water and said, "Oh, I am speechless. Ew." The gar came up and said,
Wait a minute. Did I just see you do what I think I saw you just do? Did you just, eat that shrimp and spit it back out?
Forrest the armored catfish said, Yes, kind of. And he smiled and said, Well, you just really have to understand. Let me explain. Sometimes I just get really hungry, and I just have to eat whatever I see. And then a carp swam up and asked Forrest,
Wait a minute. Would you happen to be the one who's eating up all the small food in the bay?
Wait, what do you mean? Asked Forrest as he kept looking around for something to eat. The shrimp said, It is him. Look at him. He can't even help but be hungry and look around for food, even as we speak. And then the shrimp turned to Forrest and said, We know you're super hungry and it's just natural for you to eat. It's the same way for all of us. But if you keep eating all the food for us little creatures, it messes up our home and none of us will be able to live here in the bay. Then the gar said to Forrest,
Hey, we all get hungry too. But maybe since you have such a big appetite, maybe you can eat a little bit over here, and when you're finished, you move over to another place and eat over there, and come back another time and eat again over here. That way, we can have some food to eat, and when you come back, you can also have some more food to eat too.
Then Forrest the armored catfish said, That sounds like a great idea. Thanks for understanding and talking with me about it, everyone. I really didn't mean to eat everyone's food. It won't happen again. I'll eat here, and then I'll go and eat somewhere else. And then I'll come back and eat with you all again. So Forrest the armored catfish listened, and he went to the far side of the bay, discovering new spots and patches of algae that were untouched by the other creatures. Forrest was satisfied with the new place, as he realized there was food for him and that it won't take food away from others. From that day on, Forrest became more mindful of his eating habits. He enjoyed having more than one place to find food, not only to eat different kinds of food somewhere else, but also because it helped the others have food as well. And so the bay found its balance once more. And now, Forrest, the armored catfish with a huge appetite, was able to realize what he had been doing, and he was able to change his eating habits. And all the other creatures were able to live in peace. And eventually, all of them were able to eat more food in the bay. And the armored catfish lived happily ever after. The end. The armored catfish is the largest family of catfish, which is called the Loricariidae, and it's also known as the sucker-mouthed armored catfish, or plecos. And plecos is a shortened form of the name Plecostomus. They are freshwater fish and sometimes live in brackish waters. They can live up to 8 years and weigh up to 3 pounds. The smallest armored catfish can be 1 inch long, and the largest kind of armored catfish can grow up to 39 inches long. The armored catfish's whiskers are called maxillary barbels, and they help the fish sense and find food. The armored catfish can range in many kinds of different colors and patterns throughout their bodies. They're commonly characterized by bony plates covering their body. Their bodies are commonly flattened, and their taste buds cover almost the entire surface of their bodies and their fin spines. The armored catfish looks like a typical catfish. They have whiskers and a sucker mouth and are bottom feeders. The armored catfish's armor protects them from predators. The armored catfish has strong pectoral fins. The armored catfish has gills like normal catfish, but they also can gulp air and hold it in their stomachs. And when they're outside of the water, it allows them to breathe up to 30 hours outside of the water. The armored catfish have been known to walk or shovel across the land during droughts so they can get to areas that have more water. Scientists gave a new name for this kind of walking on land, and they call it reffle. So when the armored catfish walks on land and shuffles, it's actually called reffling. There are over 680 species of armored catfish. The armored catfish eats algae, detritus, which are small worms, and other organic waste found in the waters. The armored catfish is mostly nocturnal. The armored catfish is an invasive species. In many parts of the world, the armored catfish can eat a lot of the food that other small creatures depend on. And because they're so hard to see and they lay so many eggs, it can cause the armored catfish to take over a whole region, making it hard for other creatures to survive. The armored catfish has also been known to bother manatees as they're swimming and annoys the manatees so much that they swim away from their own homes, which can make it dangerous for manatees since they need to live in a certain temperature of water. The armored catfish originates from Central and South America, but they can also be seen throughout North America. Have you seen a real-life armored catfish before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!